The war had been going on for years, and soldiers like Commander Ryan had grown used to the endless noise of explosions, gunfire, and the cries of the wounded. Every mission felt the same: another battle, another outpost, another round of orders, to follow without question. But on that day, something unexpected happened, something that would change the course of his life, forever. The human forces had been sent deep into enemy territory. Their mission was simple: strike the alien outpost, destroy their supplies, and weaken their defense line. Ryan was leading his squad through a ruined settlement, a place that once might have been full of life but was now nothing more than broken walls, dust, and the smell of fire. The air was heavy with smoke, and every soldier's finger was ready, on the trigger, waiting for the smallest movement that could mean danger. Ryan moved carefully, his senses sharp. He had seen too much death in this war, but his duty kept him pushing forward. His men followed closely, silent and tense. Suddenly, a blast shook the ground, throwing dirt and debris into the air. The enemy had noticed them. The battle that followed was fierce. Bright flashes of alien energy cut through the dark, colliding with the humans' rifles. The noise was deafening, and the ground trembled with every explosion. As Ryan ducked behind a broken wall, his eyes caught something strange in the corner of the collapsed building ahead. At first, he thought it was just rubble shifting from the blast, but then he heard it, a small, trembling cry. It was not the sound of a soldier, not the sound of war, but the voice of a child. Ryan's heart froze for a second. He looked closer, and in the dim light he saw a small figure trapped beneath shattered stones and twisted beams. It was not human. Its skin was pale with a faint glow, its eyes wide and full of terror, and its tiny hands struggled weakly against the weight pressing down on it. An alien child. For a brief moment, time seemed to stop. The war around him faded into the background, and all he could hear was the child's desperate cry. His training told him one thing: enemy, but his heart told him another. In that moment, it was not an enemy. It was just a child, helpless and afraid. Without thinking, Ryan rushed forward. His men shouted after him, confused and alarmed, but he ignored them. He dropped his weapon to the side and pushed aside the heavy stones, his hands bleeding as he worked. The child looked at him with wide eyes, unsure if he was there to help or harm. Then another explosion rocked the ground, sending more debris crashing down. Ryan didn't hesitate. He threw himself over the child, shielding its small body with his own. Dust and sharp fragments rained down on his back, cutting into his armor and skin, but he didn't move. He stayed pressed against the ground, his arms wrapped protectively around the trembling figure beneath him. When the dust finally settled, Ryan lifted his head. The child was alive, its small chest rising and falling quickly, its eyes blinking up at him in disbelief. Ryan felt his chest tighten with a feeling he hadn't known for years. Something soft, something human, something he thought war had taken from him. Compassion. Behind him, his soldiers stood frozen, staring at the sight. None of them understood why their commander would risk his life for the enemy's offspring. Some whispered in shock, others in anger. One of them finally muttered, "Commander, it's the enemy's child." "What are you doing?" Ryan didn't answer right away. He carefully pulled the child free from the rubble and lifted it into his arms. Its small fingers clung to his armor, as if holding on to life itself. Ryan looked at his men, his face stern, but calm. "It's just a child," he said firmly. "It doesn't matter whose side it was born on. No child deserves to die in this." The men exchanged uneasy glances. They had been trained to follow orders, to treat the enemy with no mercy. Saving an alien child went against everything they had been told, yet none of them could deny what they had seen. The commander throwing himself into danger, protecting innocents in the middle of destruction. The battle around them still raged, but for a moment, it felt as if a different kind of war was taking place inside every soldier's heart. Some felt shame, others confusion, and some even admiration. But none of them could look at their commander the same way again. Ryan carried the child to safety, shielding it from stray fire as he moved. The little one clung to him silently now, no longer crying, just watching him with wide, glowing eyes. It was as if it sensed something it had never expected to find in a human soldier: kindness. By the time the mission was over, Ryan knew this single act would not be forgotten. Saving the child had not been part of his orders. In fact, it went against everything his commanders demanded. But deep inside, he knew he had done the right thing. He had followed something greater than orders: his conscience. That night, as the squad regrouped and prepared to report back, the child was returned to the captured section of its people. Ryan watched quietly as alien civilians took it from his arms, their eyes filled with confusion, fear, and something else: respect. They knew what he had done. They knew he had risked his own life to protect one of theirs. As the child was carried away, it looked back at him one last time. For Ryan, that look said more than any words ever could. It was a look of trust, a fragile bond formed in the middle of chaos. What Ryan didn't know then was that this single act, born out of instinct and compassion, would change the course of not only his life but the fate of 2 entire species. Because somewhere far away, in a palace guarded by stars, a queen was waiting to hear the story of the soldier who had shielded her child with his own body. And once she heard, nothing would ever be the same again. The story of what Commander Ryan had done spread faster than wildfire. In war, small events often disappeared in the noise of endless battles. But not this one. Soldiers talked about it in hushed voices by their campfires. Commanders discussed it in closed rooms, and whispers of the story even reached the ears of the enemy. A human commander had risked his own life to protect an alien child. To some, it was an act of pure compassion. To others, it was nothing short of betrayal. When Ryan returned to his base, the looks he received from his fellow soldiers were mixed. Some saluted him with respect, unable to forget the courage he showed when he shielded the child. Others glared at him with suspicion, wondering if he had grown soft, or worse, if his loyalty to humanity had weakened. War had hardened them, and, in their eyes, mercy was dangerous. Mercy could get people killed. As he entered the command tent to give his report, Ryan already knew what awaited him. His superior officers stood tall, their faces grim. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the machines tracking the ongoing battles. His report was brief, and though he gave every detail of the mission, he could feel the weight of their eyes on him. Finally, one of the senior officers spoke. "Commander Ryan," the man said slowly, his voice carrying both authority and disappointment. "We've received troubling accounts of your actions today. You risked the mission and the lives of your men to save the child of our enemy. Do you deny it?" Ryan stood straight, his hands behind his back. "I don't deny it, sir. The child was innocent. I couldn't leave it to die." The officer slammed his hand on the table. "Innocent or not, it belongs to the enemy. Your job is to follow orders, not to play the hero. Do you understand the danger you've brought upon us? What if it had been a trap? What if saving that creature costs us later?" The room was tense. Some of the officers agreed, their faces tight with anger, but others shifted uncomfortably, as if unsure whether to condemn or admire him. Ryan's voice was calm but steady. "With respect, sir, my duty is not just to orders. My duty is also to protect life. That child did nothing wrong. If we lose our humanity in this war, then what are we fighting for?" His words hung in the air. No one answered right away. Some looked away, unwilling to meet his eyes. Others stared at him with a new kind of respect, though they said nothing. Later that night, Ryan sat alone in his quarters. The camp outside buzzed with rumors, voices rising and falling like restless waves. Some soldiers whispered that he had acted with honor, that maybe the war needed people like him to remind them that compassion still existed. Others muttered that he was reckless, that his kindness would be the weakness that destroyed them all. Ryan leaned back against the cold wall and closed his eyes. He didn't regret what he had done, but he knew the weight of it would not leave him easily. Saving the child was simple in that moment. It had been instinct, almost automatic. But now, with the world watching, the consequences began to unfold. Across the battlefield lines in alien territory, the story spread just as quickly. The child who had been saved told its people what had happened. Word reached the ears of commanders, advisors, and finally the royal palace. Soldiers who had seen only cruelty from humans now heard of a man who had thrown himself into danger to protect the smallest among them. Many refused to believe it, calling it a lie or a trick. But others felt their hearts stir with something unfamiliar: hope. Ryan's men were caught in the middle. They respected him, they trusted him, but his actions had shaken them. One evening, as they sat in the dim light of the barracks, one of his closest soldiers spoke up. "Commander, why did you do it?" the young man asked softly. "You know what people are saying. Some are calling you a hero, others are calling you a traitor. Was it worth it, for just one child?" Ryan looked at his soldier, the firelight flickering in his eyes. "If we start believing that some lives don't matter, then we've already lost this war. Not against them, but against ourselves." The soldier said nothing more, but his expression showed he understood. Days passed, but the whispers didn't stop. Reports began coming in that the aliens were not only aware of Ryan's actions, but that their queen herself had taken interest. This news spread through the human base like lightning. Soldiers traded nervous looks. Commanders feared what it meant. Why would the alien queen, the most powerful figure of their enemy, care about one human soldier's act of mercy? Ryan himself wondered the same. He had not saved the child for recognition, nor to send a message. Yet his choice seemed to be echoing far louder than he ever expected. He began to feel that invisible eyes were always watching him, judging him, weighing the worth of his compassion. One evening, he walked outside the camp, standing at the edge where the land stretched into shadows. He looked up at the stars, wondering how something so vast could still feel so heavy on his shoulders. Somewhere out there, he knew the queen had heard of him. He didn't know what she would do, but he felt deep inside that his life was no longer just his own. The consequence of mercy was not only suspicion from his people or respect from a few, it was the beginning of something far larger, something he could not yet see. A storm was forming on the horizon, and Ryan was standing in the center of it, and yet even with all the whispers, all the warnings, and all the uncertainty, he did not regret shielding that child. Not once. For when he closed his eyes, he could still feel the small hands clinging to him, the trembling body pressed against his chest, and the look of trust in those wide, glowing eyes. That memory was stronger than the doubts, stronger than the accusations, and stronger than the war itself. Ryan knew the road ahead would not be easy. His people might turn against him. The enemy might use him. But he also knew one thing for certain. His single act of compassion had already changed something in this endless cycle of hatred. And once a change begins, it cannot be undone. What? He did not know yet was that soon. Far across the stars, a queen was preparing her next move, and she would not simply let the man who saved her child fade back into the shadows of war. The message arrived in the middle of the night. Ryan was half asleep in his quarters when a soldier burst through the door, his face pale. He carried a sealed transmission, marked with both human command symbols and alien script. That alone was enough to make Ryan sit up sharply. For years, the only messages from the enemy had been threats or demands for surrender. This one was different. Ryan broke the seal and read. His heart slowed as the words sank in. It was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was a demand, but not for the human forces. It was for him. The alien queen herself wanted to meet the soldier who had shielded her child with his own body. She had sent the request directly to human command, bypassing every wall of war. The next morning, the human council gathered in secrecy. The tent was heavy with tension, as officers argued. Some believed it was a trap, a clever plan to lure one of their most trusted commanders into enemy hands. Others thought it was an opportunity. If the queen herself wished to speak, perhaps there was a chance to understand their enemy in a way no soldier ever had. When Ryan was called into the chamber, every eye turned toward him. One of the counselors spoke, his voice sharp. "Commander, the alien queen has demanded to see you. She says it is not a request but a matter of her law. She claims your act of protecting her child has created a bond that cannot be ignored. What do you say to this?" Ryan stood tall, though he felt the weight of their stares. "I say I will go. If she wants to speak, then I should hear her." The counselors erupted into arguments. Some shouted that he was walking into certain death, that the aliens would use him as a bargaining chip. Others whispered that perhaps fate itself had chosen Ryan for this strange path. Finally, the senior commander silenced them with a single gesture. His eyes locked on Ryan. "If you go knowing the risk. We cannot protect you there. You may not return." Ryan nodded once. "I understand." Preparations were made quickly. Within 2 days, a transport ship carried Ryan across the contested line of space, escorted under a rare truce flag. The silence on the journey was heavy. Soldiers looked at him with both admiration and pity, as if he were already half gone. When the ship docked at the alien capital, Ryan was escorted out under the gaze of thousands. Alien eyes followed his every step. Their shapes, their colors, their movements were different from humans, but what struck him most was not fear. It was the curiosity in their expressions. They were staring at the man who had saved one of their children, the man their queen had summoned. The palace was unlike anything Ryan had ever seen. It rose high into the air like living stone, carved with patterns that seemed to glow faintly as if alive. Guards in shimmering armor lined the halls, their eyes never leaving him. The silence of the place was deep, almost sacred. Finally, he was led into a vast chamber where the queen awaited. She sat on a throne of silver and crystal, her presence commanding yet strangely graceful. Her eyes, bright and ancient, studied him with a weight that made his chest tighten. She was not like the soldiers he had faced on the battlefield. There was power in her, but also sorrow, as if she carried the weight of every life lost in the war. For a long moment, she said nothing. The chamber was silent, but for the faint hum of energy in the walls. Then, in a voice that was both soft and commanding, she spoke. "You are the human who shielded my child." Ryan bowed his head slightly. "I am." The queen's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in disbelief. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk your life for the blood of your enemy? By all rights, you should have left the child to die. That is what your kind has always done." Ryan lifted his gaze. His voice was calm, steady. "Because it was not my enemy. It was a child. I could not let it die when I had the power to protect it." The queen studied him for a long time, her expression unreadable. Finally, she rose from her throne. Her presence seemed to fill the chamber as she stepped closer. When she stopped just before him, her eyes locked onto his. "In our laws," she said, "to shield a child with one's own body is the greatest vow of loyalty one can make. It is an act that binds life to life. By saving my child, you have bound yourself to me." Ryan's chest tightened. He had not known this. He had not acted with such knowledge. He had only followed his heart. "I did not know of your laws," he said quietly. "I did not act for reward." The queen's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. "That is why it matters. You acted without thought of gain. Such purity is rare, even among my people." Her voice grew stronger. "You are no longer only a soldier of your kind, you are bound by our law and by my word. You belong to me now." The word struck him harder than any weapon ever had. Around him, the alien guard stirred, as if sealing the queen's declaration into truth. Ryan's mind spun. He was still a commander of his people, a man sworn to protect humanity. And yet, in this moment, the alien queen was claiming him as hers. Silence stretched between them, heavy and unbreakable. Finally, the queen spoke again, her voice quieter but filled with meaning. "You have changed something, human. You have turned the course of the river, even if you do not yet see where it flows. You may choose to deny me, but the bond remains. The eyes of both our peoples are upon you now." Ryan felt the truth of her words deep in his bones. He had not sought this path, but it had come to him nonetheless. He bowed his head once more, though his heart was torn. "Then I will carry this bond with honor, for as long as it lasts." The IU. Queen studied him for a moment longer, then finally turned away. "So be it. From this day forward you walk between two worlds. Do not forget, the choice you make next will decide more than your own fate." As Ryan left the chamber, escorted, back through the glowing halls, his mind swirled. He had come to answer a summons, but he left carrying a truth that weighed heavier than armor. He was no longer just a soldier of his people. He had become something else, something larger. A bridge, a bond. A man caught between the love of his own kind and the vow he had unknowingly given to a queen. And deep inside, though he did not yet understand it, he felt that his life was no longer his own. It belonged to history. The journey back to human territory felt heavier than the one that had taken Ryan to the alien palace. When the ship carried him across the contested line of space, the weight of 1,000 stairs seemed to follow him. The Queen's words echoed in his mind over and over. "You are bound to me now." He had not sought such a fate, yet her voice lingered as though it had marked his very soul. When Ryan stepped off the ship at the human base, silence met him. Soldiers stood watching, their faces unreadable. Some looked at him with awe, as if he carried secrets no one else could imagine. Others turned away, their eyes filled with suspicion. To them, he had crossed into enemy land and returned untouched. That alone was reason for doubt. And the rumors. Oh, the rumors had spread far faster than his return. In the mess halls, whispers grew. Some said the Queen had spared him because he had saved her child. Others claimed he had struck some secret deal, trading loyalty for safety. A few went further, suggesting he had been claimed by the alien ruler herself. Ryan ignored the rumors, but he could not ignore the way his comrades looked at him differently now. The bond he carried was invisible, yet everyone seemed to feel it. The council wasted no time in questioning him. Inside the command chamber, Ryan was met with cold, sharp stares. His report was simple. The Queen had spoken of her laws. She had declared him bound, and she had not harmed him. He left nothing out. But as the words left his mouth, he saw disbelief in their eyes. "You expect us to believe she simply let you walk free?" one of the officers demanded. "That she did not use this meeting to poison your mind, to turn you against your own kind?" Ryan stood tall. "I speak only the truth. She told me that by her people's law, saving her child has bound me to her. I did not ask for it, but it is done." The room filled with angry voices. Some saw it as proof of manipulation, others as a strange opportunity. But no matter how they argued, one truth lingered. Ryan was no longer just one of their commanders. He was something more, and they did not know if that made him a weapon or a weakness. When he left the chamber, soldiers avoided his eyes. Some nodded in respect, but others whispered behind his back. He could feel the divide growing, as though an invisible wall was being built between him and the people he had sworn to serve. Days turned into weeks, and the bond with the Queen became more than words. Strange signals arrived, not intercepted war codes, but direct messages carrying only a few words. Each one was for him, simple phrases in alien script, translated by machines into human language. "You are seen. The bond remains. Your choice will shape what comes." At night, Ryan lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his quarters, wondering why those words unsettled him more than the noise of battle ever had. He was a soldier trained to follow orders, yet now his life seemed to belong to something larger than any command. He began to feel as if he walked with one foot in each world, human and alien, but belonged fully to neither. The tension grew within the camp. Some soldiers came to him quietly, asking what the Queen was like, what her palace had looked like, what her voice had sounded like. Others avoided him, whispering that he was dangerous, that his bond might make him betray them in the heat of war. For the first time in his career, Ryan felt alone among his own people. One evening, as the sun sank into the horizon and the base grew quiet, one of his closest soldiers approached him. It was the same young man who had once asked if saving the child was worth it. His eyes were troubled as he spoke. "Commander, I don't know what's happening anymore. The others, they don't trust you. They think you belong more to them than to us now. Tell me the truth, where do you stand?" Ryan was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "I stand where I have always stood. With life. With what is right. My loyalty to humanity has not changed, but neither can I deny the bond that now ties me to her. I didn't choose it, but it exists. And maybe it means something greater than any of us see right now." The young soldier studied him for a moment before nodding. "Then I'll follow you still, sir. Whatever comes." It was a small comfort in a storm of doubt. Meanwhile, beyond the human camps, the aliens began to speak of Rian as well. Stories spread that the Queen had chosen him, that his act had been a sign of change. Some called him a bridge, others called him a symbol. And as the rumors grew, so did the possibility of something unthinkable in a war that had raged for years. Peace. But peace was fragile, and not all wanted it. There were those on both sides who thrived on battle, who could not imagine a life without war. To them, Ryan was a threat, not just to his people but to theirs as well. Ryan began to feel the weight of expectation pressing on him from both sides. To humans, he was under suspicion, possibly corrupted. To aliens, he was a figure of hope, possibly chosen. But in his heart, he was only a man who had acted to protect a child. That was all. And yet, it seemed that single act had placed him on a path where the fate of entire civilizations was at stake. One night, as he walked alone at the edge of the base, the stars stretched endlessly above him. He thought of the Queen's words, "From this day forward you walk between two worlds." He could not deny the truth in them. He was no longer fully human in the eyes of his people, nor was he truly alien. He was something in between, a figure, caught in the fragile balance of hope and fear. And though he did not know how it would end, he knew one thing with certainty. The bond was real, and it would change everything. The days that followed felt like walking on the edge of a blade. Rian could sense that everything he had done, every choice he had made, had led to this moment. His single act of shielding the alien child had begun as instinct, a pure act of protection, but now it had grown into something far bigger than he could have imagined. The bond the Queen had spoken of was no longer just words. It was real, invisible yet unbreakable, and it weighed on him with every step. The Queen had sent messages again, simple but full of meaning. Your choice is needed. The fate of many rests with your decision. Come and see. He knew what it meant. She was asking him to meet her again, to make a decision that would decide not only his own life, but the future of both their peoples. When he arrived at the alien palace, he was met with the same awe-inspiring halls, the same glowing carvings that seemed alive with light. Guards bowed slightly as he passed, acknowledging the bond he carried. But the moment he stepped into the central chamber, he felt the full weight of what was expected of him. The Queen sat on her throne, calm and commanding, her eyes studying him with a depth that seemed to pierce through to his very soul. "You have returned," she said, her voice both gentle and firm. "Now the time has come to make your choice. You can return to your people and continue your life as it was. Or you can accept the bond you have created and stand with me, not just as a soldier but as a protector of peace between our worlds." Ryan felt the gravity of her words. He thought of his men back at the base, the soldiers who trusted him and followed him despite suspicion. He thought of the humans who depended on him for guidance and leadership in the middle of a war. But he also thought of the child he had saved, the alien people who saw him as a sign of hope, and the Queen whose trust and faith now rested upon him. He took a deep breath, his mind weighing the impossible choice. To stay with his people would be safe, predictable, and familiar, but to accept the bond would be to step into a future unknown, to carry the responsibility of not just one life, but of many, human and alien alike. Finally he spoke, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "I cannot turn my back on the bond I have created. I will not ignore the life I have saved and the trust that has been placed in me. I choose to stand with you, not for power, not for glory, but to protect what is right." The queen's eyes softened, and for the first time, she smiled. "Then you understand, human, that your choice is no longer just yours. You walk a path that few could ever imagine. The peace you now guard is fragile, and your courage will be tested." Ryan nodded. He had expected challenges, but the weight of responsibility still surprised him. Yet there was a strange comfort in knowing that he had chosen with a clear heart. He was no longer merely a soldier. He was a symbol of hope, a bridge between worlds. The queen rose from her throne and stepped closer, her presence overwhelming yet comforting. "The child you saved is safe because of you. Your people will one day understand that not all acts of mercy are weakness, and perhaps, one day, both our worlds will see that compassion is stronger than war." Ryan felt a sense of peace wash over him. For the first time since the battle where he had shielded the child, he felt that his action had not only saved one life, but had the power to change the lives of many. He realized that courage was not only in fighting but in choosing to do what is right, even when the world around him demanded otherwise. He spent days in the palace, learning from the queen, understanding the customs, the laws, and the hearts of a people he had once thought only as enemies, and in turn he shared what he knew of humanity, teaching them that even in the harshest times, mercy could exist. Slowly, Rian began to see a future where humans and aliens could coexist, not as enemies, but as allies bound by respect and understanding. Back on human soil, rumors spread of Ryan's decision. Soldiers and commanders alike debated whether he had made the right choice. Some feared he had been taken by the enemy. Others whispered that he had been chosen for a purpose far greater than the war itself. And though many did not understand, a small number began to see that perhaps his courage could bring about a new path. Rian often thought of the child, whose life had started all of this. The child was now safe among its people, growing under the watchful eyes of both family and the humans who had begun to trust in the possibility of peace. And every time he thought of the child, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The bond he carried was no longer a burden, it was a promise. Weeks turned into months, and the fragile peace began to take shape. Skirmishes between humans and aliens lessened in the areas where Ryan's presence and guidance reached. His choices created trust, and trust created understanding. It was not a perfect peace, but it was a beginning, a seed planted in the ashes of war. The queen spoke often with Rian now, not as a ruler to a soldier, but as a mentor to a guardian. Together they made plans to ensure that future generations would not know only the cruelty of war but also the strength found in mercy and courage. And every time Ryan looked at her, he remembered the first time he had shielded the child with his own body, and how that single act had grown into a destiny he could never have imagined. In the quiet moments, Ryan allowed himself a small smile. He had risked everything, crossed the lines of battle, and faced the judgment of both his people and the aliens, and in return, he had found a path where his courage could protect not just one life, but many. It was not an easy path, and the future was still uncertain, but he knew he would face it with honor, compassion, and strength. Ryan's story spread among both humans and aliens, growing into legend. Soldiers told tales of the man who had shielded, a child in the middle of war, who had chosen mercy over orders, who had bridged two worlds with courage and heart. And while many still doubted, many more were inspired. They began to understand that sometimes one small act of bravery could change everything. And so Rian stood not only as a soldier but as a guardian of hope. He had chosen to protect life, to honor the bond he had created, and to walk a path that no one else could walk. The war was not over, but a new chapter had begun, one where understanding and courage could shape the future. And somewhere far above, the stars watched silently as a man and a queen worked to create a world where mercy was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all.